The college football playoff, the transfer portal, and the college football calendar are in dire need of fixing. So today, I'm going to give the way to fix it. The first issue we'll talk about is the college football playoff. The seeds with a bye are 1-7 in the past two playoff cycles. It is not an advantage right now to have a bye week. So how can we fix that? That's something we'll get to. Eliminate conference championship games. It's not something that people want to do. Conference championship games are often fun to watch. They bring in a lot of revenue, and they often do give you a good answer to who the best team in a conference is. But couldn't you just crown your conference champion like they do in college basketball? There's a regular season conference champion in basketball. They play a tournament, but there's a regular season conference champion. And oftentimes you see that the regular season conference champion is different from who wins the conference tournament. You look at Michigan last year. Michigan won the conference tournament last year, but Michigan State won the regular season. So isn't it more beneficial to just say, hey, this team played the best through the regular season. They deserve to be the champions. They shouldn't have to play to guarantee their spot at the top. And that week should be filled by a play-in week. Now, why do you eliminate the conference championship games? You look at Alabama and Notre Dame. Notre Dame was 10-2. They aren't in a conference. They don't have a conference championship game. Notre Dame finishes 10-2. Their only two losses were right at the beginning of the season. They're on a 10-game winning streak. You have Alabama, who hasn't looked like they can run the ball, has had some issues. When Ty Simpson isn't on, the whole team is struggling. They roll into the SEC championship game also at 10-2, and they lose. So now they're 10-3. Can you put a 3-loss team into the playoff, but can you keep a 10-win team out of the playoff? And that's a controversy that was had. Notre Dame fans, you'll ask them, they aren't upset that Miami made the playoff. They're upset that Alabama made it over them. But that would be completely eliminated if you just took a regular season conference champion. It would have been Georgia. So what's the deal with this play-in week? We got bubble teams this year. You look at BYU, you look at Notre Dame, you look at Vanderbilt, you look at Texas, just to name a few. All of those teams, I believe, should deserve to play for a playoff spot. So here's how you would do it. The top 8 seeds in the final college football playoff ranking would be auto bids. You would have the 4 conference champions, and they wouldn't necessarily maybe be in the top 8. But the 4 conference champions will absolutely have an auto bid, so we can keep conference championships or winning a conference championship relevant. And then there would be 4 at-large teams. Those guys would essentially get a bye during the play-in week. So how would the play-in week work? The 9 seed would play the 14 seed, the 10 seed would play the 13 seed, the 11 seed would play the 12 seed, and then there would be a group of 5 game where the 2 best group of 5 teams play against each other for the 12th spot in the playoff. Because I think it's wrong to just completely shove the group of 5 out of the playoff, but I think it's also wrong that Tulane and JMU were in it this year, right? Tulane and JMU stood no chance against their competition. Oregon, boat race JMU. Ole Miss, boat race Tulane. And you look at Tulane and Ole Miss, they played earlier in the year, and it was the same result. So why would you expect it to be different in the playoff? That's something that needs fixed. We make it 1 group of 5 slot. What would these games look like this year if it was in this model? You would have an Alabama and Vanderbilt rematch, the 9 versus 14. You would have a Miami-Texas game, 10-13, and you would have a Notre Dame BYU game. I mean, can you really definitively tell me that those would not be insane games? I mean, they would be awesome. Absolutely awesome. And then you would have Tulane against JMU. They would play in the group of 5 game. One of them would go as the 12th seed. And once these play-in games are decided, you straight seed the top 11. That 12th seed is obviously the group of 5. No matter what, they will always be the 12th seed. I mean, I know that's kind of, it seems wrong that the group of 5 can't earn their way to a higher seeding, but it's really just how it should go. The group of 5 is 0-4 in college football playoff history so far. So that just can't slide. That's my fix for the playoff. Obviously, there's some kinks that would need to be worked out, within the seeding, like the top 8, the auto bids. You would probably have to have it so all 4 conference champions would be top 8 teams. And then, because if you ran into a situation where, hey, this conference champion is ranked 14, you don't want a conference champion being forced to play in a play-in game. Let's move on to the transfer portal. It is an issue right now. You look at TJ Finley. He, started at Auburn or LSU or somewhere. He's played for 6 teams, and he's in the portal again this year. He will play for 7 teams in his college football, which is normally just a 4-year or 5-year thing. He will play for 7 teams as a college football player. He's just jumping from paycheck to paycheck. And it's not like any of his moves have been vertical moves. They've all been either horizontal or they've been negative. He's gone from where he started at LSU to he played for Georgia State this year. So that needs to be fixed. How can we fix it? 1 free transfer. 1 free transfer, and after your and then your second transfer, you would have to sit a year. I think that's the best way to do it. It could be unfair to a player who starts in Division II and transfers up to an FCS school, and then you would have them transferring to, a FBS school, and they'd have to sit a year. Maybe you could work it out that a D2 to FCS transfer doesn't really hurt or count as a transfer. That's something that could be worked out. Kind of how the JUCO years don't count as eligibility. It could be one of those type of rules. But 1 transfer, you sit for a year after your second transfer. We need to sign legal contracts. I think it's officially time that there's no way to fix this situation without making these players employed. Right? You look at the DeMond Williams situation. He agreed to a deal with Washington, and then a couple days later, he enters the portal because he's not legally bound to that contract. And if all these coaches, they think that, DeMond Williams, all these Washington coaches, Jed Fish, everybody, they're like, okay, yeah, I have DeMond Williams coming back this year. We've signed the deal. But you haven't signed anything legally binding, so he still is able to enter the portal, and that's what he did. He's ultimately coming back to Washington, but Washington was ready to press legal charges. One way to fix that, make them true, legally binding contracts. It's going to be a tough hurdle to jump, but I think it's one that needs to be jumped at this point. I mean, you look at the effect that all of this has on high school recruiting. As a Michigan fan, I look at Ty Haywood. Ty Haywood was committed to Alabama as a 5-star offensive tackle. He was committed to Alabama. He flipped his commitment to Michigan because Michigan offered him a lot of money. He plays for a year, sits for a year, redshirts, and right after that freshman year, he enters the portal and goes right back to Alabama. So what was the point in Michigan even recruiting him in the first place? If you have no chance to develop him, you have no chance to even get him to a starting spot, and he just jumps ship and goes right back to Alabama. That's something that needs to be fixed. And I think the 1 transfer rule would probably fix it because it would force these players to consider, do I want to commit to this high-end school right away without a chance to play in a couple years or right away? Or do I want to commit somewhere lower, prove myself, and then commit to a higher school through the transfer portal? What it's going to end up doing is it's going to make some of these players, these good players, not great players, but good players, commit to lower schools. In turn, that will make college football more competitive. The elite players will commit to the elite schools, and it will make the upper end of college football better. You won't just have schools like Michigan or Ohio State or Alabama just stockpiling 4-stars that are ultimately going to transfer in a year. It makes the college football landscape better. So 1 transfer, you sit a year after the second. I think that is absolutely the right choice. And then let's look at the calendar. You need to move the season up because what we've seen now is a whole bunch of issues with the coaching carousel. You look at the Lane Kiffin situation. Lane Kiffin leaves Ole Miss in the middle of a playoff run to go to LSU. You look at John Summerall leaves Tulane in the middle of a playoff run to go to Florida. And he's still going back and he's still trying to coach. And he's trying and trying and trying to coach. But Tulane stands no chance because Summerall has to focus on his Tulane team and his Florida team. It's two separate worlds. You can't do it. You look at Brian Hartline, the offensive coordinator for Ohio State. He got hired by USF. He tried to stay at Ohio State and tried to call the plays, but he couldn't because he had to focus on recruiting the portal and retaining his players at USF while trying to coach a potential national championship roster at Ohio State. It's not something you can do. So how do you fix it? You move the calendar up. You start a little earlier in August so that ultimately the national championship game falls on January 1st. The reason the transfer portal is where it is because it has to somewhat line up with the school, the university schedule. You don't want these kids having the opportunity to transfer, in the middle of a semester. You want it to fall at the beginning of a semester. And schools they're getting off Christmas break now, so it's a good time to go to a new school and start a new semester. And that's where, that's the original thought behind it. But the season ends on January 19th. So you have a team like Indiana and Miami that are still playing, but they have players entering the portal in the middle of their season. That can't happen. It happened to Oregon. Oregon had no running backs against Indiana because all of them were in the portal already. And then the one guy that played was in the portal. He was playing as he was in the portal. It's a terrible system. So you move the season up so that it ends directly on January 1st, and then the portal opens on January 2nd, and the coaching carousel can start then as well. I think that's the best option. I don't think coaches should be able to move until their season is absolutely over. So move the calendar up. It's the only option. I mean, it's not fair to Dan Lanning that his running back room is depleted by the transfer portal as he's trying to coach them to a national championship. It's not fair to the Tulane players that their coach is doing double time with Florida. It's not fair to the Ohio State offense that their offensive coordinator is doing double time at USF. It's not fair. It's not right. But I think those are my fixes. These are necessary fixes. They're not recommended. They're necessary. If college football wants to fix itself, this is how it does it. I think we've gotten to a point where we're doing some of the right things, but for not the right reasons. It is a good thing that these players are being paid. It's a good thing that they can freely move from a school to a different school. But it's to the point where they're just being thrown money over and over again from different schools. You look at Justice Haynes, got thrown a ton of money from Georgia Tech, and that kept him out of the NFL. The goal for these kids now isn't the NFL anymore. It's to stay in college for as long as you possibly can. And I don't think that's good for the sport of football. I think these players are less motivated. I don't think they want to compete. There's no loyalty. And those are things that need to be infused back into the college football game. And this is how you do it. So those are my necessary fixes. Thank you for tuning in to The Bright Side. I'll see you back next time.